Hi everybody, this is Liz with Connecting Threads, and today I'm going to show you how to use triangles on a roll paper. Now, this is one of the things that we sell on CT in multiple different sizes, and I guarantee that you probably have a lot of quilt patterns in your arsenal that use half square triangles. Now, they also have this awesome book, Triangles on a Roll Quilts, if you need a little bit of inspiration, but I think just about every quilter has a quilt on their docket that uses half square triangles. Now, one of the great things about triangles on a roll paper is that you can make a lot of half square triangles at once, plus you can make sure that they stay consistent. One of the biggest issues I've run into when I'm sewing a lot of half square triangles is that the edges can get a little stretched and they can get a little bit tough. This paper acts kind of like a foundation paper to help make sure that your stitches are pristine through all of those diagonals. So I want to walk you through how to use this paper. It is very, very useful, and you'll notice it comes in multiple different sizes. So whatever size you need your end half square triangle to be, I guarantee that you'll be able to find it here. So we're going to go over the basics of the instructions so that you understand what you're doing, and then I'll walk you through the whole process. The most important thing to know about half square triangles is understanding what size you would like your finished half square triangle to be. And the best part about these rolls is that they give you that information right on the front of the package. They show you what the unfinished size is and what the finished size will be. So one of the things that's really important is once your quilt is sewn together, the size of the block inside your sewn quilt is your finished size. So these are 2.5 inch finished half square triangles. Now what that means is that the unfinished size is actually 3 inches because you have a 1/4 inch seam allowance around each edge. So it's really, really important to know what size your finished and unfinished half square triangles are going to be. Now everything else, they actually lay out the instructions on the front of the package really, really well, and it's super easy to do. And one of my favorite parts is they give you all of the sizes as well. So you don't need to guesstimate about what size you need to cut out. They tell you on each one of the rolls what size fabric your base squares are going to be. So these are going to finish out at 2.5 inches inside your finished quilt. So it tells you in the directions, cut fabric 7.5 inches wide for your desired 2.5 inch square triangle. And because you're going to be sewing multiples at once, it seems like kind of an odd size, but it will cut down perfectly into multiple 2.5 inch half square triangles. So the rest of the directions are also really straightforward. All you are going to do is cut out 2 pieces of fabric in the size that they list at the top of the directions. We are going to cut out the piece of paper and we are going to pin it on top of the 2 pieces of fabric sandwiched together. The best part is it even has little arrows on the paper to show you exactly where to sew, and it shows you exactly where you're going to need to cut. These truly are one of the most straightforward products that we've got, and I absolutely love them, and I guarantee that once you start using them, you're never going to make a half square triangle another way. Let's go ahead and walk through how to do this from point A all the way to your finished half square triangle blocks. Once you've chosen which size of finished half square triangle you're going to be sewing, today I'm going to be sewing a 3 inch finished half square triangle. You're going to roll out your roll, and you'll notice that one of these sheets has directions that will remind you exactly what size of square you need to cut out of your fabric. And then it also has these hard lines on it. This is where you're going to be doing the cutting of your paper. So you want to make sure that you cut out this square. And when I lift this up, you'll notice that I've already cut out a couple of squares, both out of my fabric and of the triangles on a roll paper. Now, I highly recommend that if you're going to be doing multiple half square triangles, you cut out multiple pieces of paper so that you can streamline this process as you go. Now, once you've got your squares and you've cut out your half square triangle paper, we're going to put right sides together. I chose solids to make this very, very easy, but make sure that you've got right sides together here. And then we're going to take a piece of our half square triangle paper, we're going to lay it down, and then what I like to do is I like to pin right along where your seam lines are going to be. Now, it's very important when you're looking at this paper that you understand the difference between seam lines and cut lines. Seam lines are going to be the dotted lines that you see here, and the cut lines, where we're going to be cutting our fabric, are the solid lines right here. So in the end, we will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 half square triangles. So we want to make sure that we pin along all of these seam lines to make sure that this paper stays in place. Now, I know that there are going to be a lot of people that are not big fans of pinning, but trust me when I tell you, you will end up with much better half square triangles that are crisper and cleaner if you pin along these lines. Typically, I go pretty quickly and I just pin 2 on each side. You don't need to go overboard with your pinning. It is very, very easy. So we're just gonna do 2, and then I like to rotate and do another 2 along each one of these lines. Let's go ahead and finish this pinning. It's very, very fast. If you're going to be sewing a lot of these at once, I like to prep a couple of these at the same time. I've found it's really, really easy to do a lot of sewing of these very, very quickly. And so I like to prep a couple at a time just so I can breeze through multiple half square triangles at once. We're gonna go ahead and pin our last one. And now we are ready to sew. When you're finally ready to sew your half square triangles, you'll notice that there are 2 different types of arrows. These arrows are the 2 different squares of stitches that we're about to sew. Now, I know it's a little confusing, so I'm going to walk you through how to do this. You're first going to find your long arrow right here, and you'll notice that it is quite a distance from the edge of the paper. This is going to be your starting point for your first row of stitches. And one of the things that's great about the triangles on a roll paper is it leads you through this connecting seam where you do 1 diagonal, another diagonal, another diagonal, and 1 last diagonal. So it walks you through how to sew multiple seams at once, and it's gonna make the whole process a lot easier. So let's go ahead and rotate back to where we need to start, which is going to be right here where our large arrow is. Go ahead and prep my sewing machine. I will get it right there, right at the edge of the dotted lines. Remember, we're sewing on the dotted lines. The cutting is gonna happen on the solid lines. And then let's go ahead and start sewing. Now, when you come to the end of one of these lines, what I like to do is manually push my needle forward until I hit the edge of that dotted line. And then I'm going to lift up my foot and I'm going to rotate to the next line. And what we're gonna do is just run through this whole section here until we finish out this first square. Once you've finished sewing your half square triangles, we are going to go ahead and start cutting. Now, there's a couple of different ways that you can go about this, so I'm going to show you the easiest way to cut this thing so that you can get through it as quickly as possible. The first thing that I like to do is cut along the edges here. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that we cut out this square. Then we're going to cut down the middle, and then we are going to cut our diagonals. So let's go ahead and get started. Once you've gone through and you've cut all of your half square triangles, you should end up with a stack just like this of these little triangles. Now the first thing that we need to do is take the paper off. And the upside is when you sew along this dotted line, it basically creates a perforated edge. So all you need to do is tear and just pull and it's off. And we'll go ahead and just kind of take off this little end bit right here. Sometimes the ends give me a little bit of trouble, but we'll go ahead and just kind of pull that right off and we're pretty much good to go. Now what we need to do is iron it. So let's go ahead and get rid of the excess paper. I'm gonna move these out of the way. And all we need to do to iron is just lay it flat, push back one side, take your iron, and we're going to iron that out. And there you go. There's your half square triangle. Now, one of the things that you may want to do is cut off these little dog ears at the end. So I like to cut all of my half square triangles together. So you'll notice I have a stack of 8 that were created from my triangles on a roll. And these little dog ears, I like to cut them all off at the same time because it's really annoying when you're doing one and then going back and ironing and one in the other. So I go through my full ironing, and then once I'm ready, I go ahead and take my half square triangles, take my rotary cutter. I don't measure because most of the time you can get a pretty clean cut off of those, and your square is ready to go. Now, if you need to resize your half square triangle, you can go ahead and double check the size on your cutting board. But one of the great things about these triangles on the roll is that I have gotten a perfect half square triangle pretty much every single time. These are supposed to be 3.5 by 3.5. It looks almost perfect. So these are pretty much ready to go. No trimming is required, and you can go ahead and start quilting. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see all of you on the next video.